An unexpected visitor, the morning sunlight streamed through the floor to ceiling windows of Marcus Wellington's executive office on the 20th floor of Wellington Technologies, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany desk where he sat reviewing quarterly reports. At 42, Marcus had built his software company into one of the most successful tech firms in the region, and Mondays typically began with a carefully scheduled series of meetings that would determine the week's priorities and direction. His assistant Jennifer had just brought in his second cup of coffee. When she appeared in his doorway again, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern that immediately caught Marcus's attention. "Mr. Wellington, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation at reception," Jennifer said carefully. Sarah Mitchell was scheduled for a 9 o'clock interview for the administrative coordinator position, but she didn't arrive. Instead, her daughter is here. Marcus frowned, glancing at his schedule. Sarah Mitchell's interview had been arranged after she impressed the HR department with her resume, 10 years of experience in nonprofit administration, glowing references, and exactly the kind of organizational skills their growing company needed. Her daughter, how old? She appears to be about 7 or 8. She's asking to see you personally. She says her mother is sick and she came to explain. A child's courage, Marcus felt his irritation at the disruption soften slightly. He had a 7-year-old daughter himself and could imagine how worried a child would be about a parent's illness, worried enough to come to an intimidating office building alone. "Send her up," Marcus said, closing his laptop and preparing himself for what would likely be a brief, awkward conversation before sending the child safely home with information about rescheduling her mother's interview. 5 minutes later, a small figure appeared in his doorway, and Marcus found himself looking at a little girl with serious brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a slightly messy ponytail. She wore a school uniform that was clean but showed signs of wear, and she clutched a worn folder to her chest with both hands. Despite the obvious nervousness in her posture, she held her head high with a determination that reminded Marcus of his own daughter when she was trying to be brave. "Mr. Wellington?" the girl asked, her voice small but steady. "I'm Emma Mitchell. My mom was supposed to come for an interview today, but she's really sick with the flu and can't get out of bed. I came instead to explain why she couldn't come and to ask if you could please give her another chance." Upon Chapter 30, beyond standard protocol, Marcus felt something shift in his chest as he looked at this small child who had navigated public transportation or walked however many blocks to reach his office building, all to advocate for her sick mother's job opportunity. The courage it must have taken for Emma to come here alone, to face the intimidating lobby and reception desk, and ask to see the CEO directly, it spoke volumes about both the child's character and the kind of mother who had raised her. "Emma, please come in and sit down," Marcus said gently, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "How did you get here this morning?" "I took the bus," Emma replied, settling carefully into the chair that was clearly too large for her. "Mom taught me which bus to take and where to get off. She didn't want me to come. She doesn't even know I'm here, but I heard her crying last night because she was so worried about missing this interview." "Your mother was crying?" Marcus asked gently. Emma nodded, her grip tightening on the folder she held. "She really needs this job, Mr. Wellington. We've been living in a small apartment since my daddy died 2 years ago, and Mom works really hard at 2 different jobs, but she's always tired and she never gets to spend time with me. She said this job would be perfect because it's just one job with good hours and she could pick me up from school every day." Understanding the situation, Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying the serious little girl who had just shared such personal information with a stranger because she loved her mother enough to risk looking foolish or being turned away. "Emma, I appreciate you coming all this way to explain about your mother. That took a lot of courage. What's in the folder you're holding?" Emma carefully opened the folder and pulled out several papers that had clearly been handled with great care. "This is Mom's resume, and these are copies of letters from her old bosses saying how good she is at her job. I brought them in case you needed to see them again." Marcus accepted the papers, noting how neatly they were organized despite being somewhat wrinkled from Emma's tight grip. As he reviewed Sarah Mitchell's credentials, impressive experience, consistent employment history, skills that aligned perfectly with what they needed, he found himself thinking less about the interview that hadn't happened and more about the woman who had raised a daughter brave enough to show up in her place. "Emma, can you tell me what your mom does at her current jobs?" Marcus asked. She works at the community center in the mornings, helping people fill out forms and find programs they need. Then she works at Murphy's Diner in the evenings, serving food and cleaning tables. Emma's voice wavered slightly. She comes home really late and she's always tired, but she still helps me with my homework and reads me stories before bed. A different kind of interview, Marcus found himself conducting an interview unlike any he had ever experienced. Instead of asking about organizational systems and administrative experience, he was learning about a working mother's daily challenges, about her dedication to providing for her daughter, and about the kind of character that showed itself not in a polished presentation, but in how she had raised a child who would take a bus across town to advocate on her behalf. "What does your mom like most about helping people at the community center?" Marcus asked. Emma brightened slightly. "She says everyone deserves to be treated with respect, especially when they're asking for help. She says that just because someone needs assistance doesn't mean they should be made to feel small or ashamed." Marcus felt recognition stir in his memory. The community center Emma mentioned was one that Wellington Technologies had supported with grants for years, providing computer equipment and funding for job training programs. Sarah Mitchell's name was familiar because she had sent him a thoughtful thank you letter after their most recent donation, expressing not just gratitude but genuine understanding of how the technology would impact the families they served. "Emma, I remember your mother's letter. She wrote very thoughtfully about our company's donation to the center." The Emma nodded. Mom spent a whole evening writing that letter. She said it was important to let people know when their kindness made a difference. Making a decision, Marcus stood up and walked to his window, looking out over the city while he processed what he had learned this morning. Standard hiring protocol would suggest rescheduling Sarah Mitchell's interview and moving on with his day. But nothing about this situation felt standard, and sometimes the most important information about a candidate came not from a formal interview, but from unexpected sources. He turned back to Emma, who was watching him with barely concealed anxiety, her small hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Emma, I'm going to make you a deal," Marcus said, returning to his desk. "I'm going to offer your mother the position, contingent on her accepting it once she's feeling better. But I need you to promise me something." Emma's eyes widened. "You're giving Mom the job?" Really? "But Emma, you need to promise me that you'll never take the bus alone like this again without your mother's permission. What you did today was brave, but it was also dangerous. Your mother would be very worried if she knew you were here." "I promise," Emma said quickly, relief and excitement flooding her face. "I was really scared on the bus, but I didn't know what else to do. Mom needs this job so much." Beyond business, Marcus picked up his phone and called his HR director. "Jennifer, I need you to prepare an offer letter for Sarah Mitchell for the administrative coordinator position. Full benefits package, and I want to include our emergency childcare program in the offer. Also, please arrange for a car service to take her daughter home safely." After ending the call, Marcus wrote a note on his personal stationery explaining that Emma's courage and advocacy had demonstrated exactly the kind of character and dedication they valued at Wellington Technologies, and that he hoped Sarah would accept the position once she recovered from her illness. "Emma, this letter is for your mother," Marcus said, sealing it in an envelope. "It explains that we'd like her to join our team. A car will take you home, and someone from our HR department will call your mother later today with the details." "Thank you, Mr. Wellington," Emma said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you so much. Mom is going to be so happy, and she won't have to work 2 jobs anymore, and she can pick me up from school and—" Marcus smiled, holding up his hand gently. "Emma, there's something else. I have a daughter about your age, and she's been wanting to make new friends since we moved to Cedar Falls. Would it be all right if I gave your mother her information? Maybe you two could meet sometime?" Lessons learned. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the company's break room, watching through the window as Sarah Mitchell coordinated a volunteer event with the efficiency and warmth that had made her invaluable to the company in her short time there. Emma and his own daughter Lily were in the children's area nearby, working on homework together and giggling over some shared joke. Sarah approached him with a clipboard and a smile that reflected genuine job satisfaction, so different from the stressed exhaustion that Emma had described from her mother's previous work life. "Mr. Wellington, the volunteer schedule for next month is complete, and I've confirmed all the participants for the job fair," Sarah reported. "Also, I wanted to thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I know Emma's surprise visit wasn't exactly professional. Emma's visit was the most impressive interview I've ever conducted. Marcus replied honestly. She taught me something important about how we evaluate people. We spend so much time reviewing resumes and checking references, but sometimes the best indicator of someone's character is how their children speak about them and what they're willing to do to help them. She was terrified that morning, Sarah admitted. When I discovered what she had done, I was torn between being furious that she'd taken such a risk and being overwhelmed by how much she cared. She's quite a kid. She is, and she's a reflection of quite a mother. As Marcus watched Emma and Lily work together, their laughter floating through the office space that had become more friendly since Sarah had joined the team and suggested improvements to accommodate working parents, he reflected on how a single unconventional Monday morning had led to changes that extended far beyond one hiring decision. Sometimes the bravest interviews were conducted not by polished professionals in business attire, but by 7-year-old children who love their mothers enough to overcome their fears and advocate for them. And sometimes the best hiring decisions were made not based on traditional credentials, but on the courage and character that showed itself in unexpected moments of crisis and love.